Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to thank you all for joining us this morning to hear our webinar on protecting yourself through cyber threats and risk mitigation regarding workers' comp and remote workers. My name is April Ferrara. I'm an advisor here at Colony West. I'm very excited to be co-presenting today with Michael Armstrong of Evolve MGA. Hopefully everyone can see our screen here. If you should have any questions, we will have time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation, and we are also recording this presentation, and we'll be sending you a copy of the deck and the recording. So if you have any questions at all, you can go ahead and just put those in the chat box, and we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to get started. Again, I'm an advisor here at Colony West, specializing in all lines of insurance. We also have a sister company, Outlook HR, and that we're happy to provide HR and payroll and administrative services for all of your companies. So let me go back, and I just want to take a second and have Michael introduce himself and talk a little bit about what he does with Evolve. So Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today, April. Like you said, my name is Michael Armstrong. I'm originally from Dana Point, California, a third-generation insurance professional, and I'm now specialized in the cyber field for about 2 years with Evolve. So a little bit of background about Evolve before we jump in. Evolve is a cyber MGA. So what that means is we specialize only in cyber insurance. When it comes to product innovation, risk assessment, following trend statistics, and claims handling, we are second to none in our industry, and it's truly why we have formed this great partnership with Colony West and Evolve MGA. And ultimately, we've built this exclusive cyber specialist program that encompasses 3 pillars: pre-breach tools, broad coverage, and a cyber specialist claims team. So I'm beyond excited to be here and spread some light on this very relevant and popular topic.
Great, thank you, Michael. So as we've all seen, the world is tipped upside down, and there are additional, just when we thought there couldn't be additional risks to mitigate in the state of California, we now have some additional items that we need to consider when operating an entity inside of California. So we've experienced some additional risks that employers are exposed to because of the pandemic. So we're just briefly going to cover the workers' compensation portion, and then we're going to move on to Michael's specialty, which is the cyber portion that relates to having remote workers working from home but still accessing your data, your website, your server. So workers' compensation, this is just important. We're just going to touch on briefly because if you do have workers working from home, remote, there are a couple of areas that you want to address, and I'm happy to set up a time with our HR professional if you have any questions beyond the scope of what these 2 slides are going to encompass. The biggest opening to risk is going to be the working station that your employees are going to find themselves in. So there are a couple of best practices that you're going to want to think about when talking about your employees and their home office. So this slide demonstrates just a light conversation that you're going to want to have with those workers, just to make sure that they understand that they have the ability to have an ergonomically friendly work area. So I said I will send this deck over, so you'll have a copy of this slide for yourself. But another thing you should be considering is letting them know how to properly create a safe workspace. If you're able to, but it's not required, consider inspecting their work area, possibly having them send a photo so that you can make some suggestions or some tips, and also to teach injury prevention. So those are some things that you're going to want to think about. And the most important aspect of this is just communicating with your employees what options they have and how you're there to support them. Because you do need to keep in mind that even though you have remote workers, should they be injured in their home office, this could potentially trigger a workers' compensation claim. And again, we're happy to have an offline conversation with you about your specific and individual concerns about your remote workforce. But we're going to go ahead and move on to the topic that we really want to get to. And I'm going to turn this over to Michael, and he's going to start to talk with us about some of the the other inherent risks with having your employees log on to the internet remotely. So Michael, I'm going to go ahead and let you take it from here.
Perfect. So to start, we're going to jump into a few high-level, very important statistics that are very applicable to our world today in the business world. So according to IBM's cyber report, it takes companies on average 197 days to realize they've been hacked. What is the goal here? So the goal for hackers is to go unnoticed. Why? There's a few different things they want to accomplish. They want to monitor your schedule. They want to understand your communication methods with employees, clients, or vendors. And ultimately, what they want to do is understand your invoice and payment procedures. Lastly, in regards to ransomware, one of the most common claims that we handle in our industry, what they want to do in that case specifically is slowly encrypt your data, including your backups, to leave your business unoperable. So the goal here is for them to be silent within your system and go unnoticed. 62% of the attacks are on small to mid-sized businesses, and 60% of the businesses will go out of business within 6 months of a cyber attack. What people need to understand is these small to mid-sized businesses are the major targets for hackers. They're more vulnerable when it comes to cybersecurity, employee awareness, and training. And as a business, what we've come to realize specifically in cyber, your number one exposure is your employees, because human error has been the number one cause of a majority of the cyber attacks and claims that we handle. So if you as a business have a business email and a bank account, this is going to automatically increase your exposure to majority of the claims we're handling. And as you can imagine, most businesses have those two pieces of information. Lastly, last year alone, California lost about $575 million due to cyber crime in 2019 as a result of about 50,000 victims. That was pulled directly from the FBI's Internet Crime Report that they released in 2019. And year after year, California has been the highest target when it comes to number of attacks and losses. So let's go ahead and take a look at what each and every US business is doing currently. So the first is performing financial transactions, right? This is a key part of the growth to any company. And as we know now, there is an extremely high volume of transfers day in and day out, and thus increasing the rate of a potential attack such as funds transfer fraud, aka social engineering, where an employee or a client is tricked into sending money to the wrong place. It's really that simple. And we see it time and time again. Secondly, they collect sensitive data, whether it's email, name, address, phone number, credit card information, and so forth. Each company is aggregating a large amount of data when it comes to employees, clients, and so on. So lastly, where are we as a nation when it comes to technology? Technology is increasing and evolving at such a rapid pace right now. So in 2016, Microsoft had predicted by 2020 there'd be 4 billion active internet users. Right now in 2020, we're at 4.4 billion active internet users with a world population of 7.8 billion people. So that means that 60% of our world's population is currently on the internet and utilizing it actively. So with more and more connected devices, there's going to be a higher volume of data being transferred virtually via networks, especially given our current circumstance with COVID-19 and the fact that many companies are currently working remote. So it's going to make it tougher and tougher for us to really mitigate or stop potential attacks for these businesses. And then lastly, you cannot 100% stop hackers. Cybersecurity is 100% important, and I always emphasize the importance of investing resources and money into cybersecurity, but no system is bulletproof, especially with human error being the number one cause of most cyber attacks. Cybersecurity Ventures predicts that cyber crime damage will cost the world about 6 trillion annually by 2021. And this report was released in partnership with Cisco, who are very reliable in this field and have numerous statistics and data to actually back up these reports. But take ransomware, for example. How long will your business survive if you are unoperable with no access to your network and data? So what we're going to do is jump into a few statistics. So malicious hackers are now attacking computers and networks at a rate of one attack every 39 seconds. 81% of surveyed organizations were affected by a successful cyber attack in 2019. Scammers and attacks send out about 6.4 billion fake emails every day. And ultimately, I want to scroll down to the bottom where it says 95% of data breaches are due to human error. What are our biggest takeaways from there? First off, hacking is a business, and if I may say, it's a very successful industry and business. Their goal, hackers' goal, is to push out as much viruses and attacks as possible. It is just going to create a higher volume and chance of an actual hit. And it's the reason we call it phishing. You hear the term all the time and related to cyber. It's because what they want to do is cast a wide net, essentially, by sending out viruses to hundreds of thousands of businesses at once, hoping 10 to 20 actually click and fall into the attack. So hackers prey on human vulnerability, and with COVID-19 specifically being our current situation in our country and our world, so many people working remote. The FBI by March 30th of 2020 had already received 1,200 cyber complaints related to phishing links due to COVID-19. So keep that in mind. They prey on the human vulnerability and they prey on context. So which brings me to my next point. The top 2 cyber exposures. So these are the top 2 claims we're currently handling in our field. The first being ransomware. Common causes are phishing links, right? And according to the FBI, phishing links are the source of 90% of successful hacks and data breaches. So in these cases, right, these hackers are aggregating hundreds to thousands, like I said, business emails. They are then launching an attack with a phishing link included and a very lucrative heading to the email related to, let's say, COVID-19 or your specific business. And they're trying to trick your employees into clicking on these links. And right now with COVID, everybody is very click heavy, given they want the newest updates. They want to be informed about what's going on and so forth. So again, with ransomware, this is going to leave your business unoperable until payment is made, and systems could ultimately be permanently damaged because they want to encrypt your information and thus not giving you any access to your actual system. The next is funds transfer fraud or social engineering. Simply put, it's wiring money to the wrong place. And again, like I mentioned earlier, if you have a business email and a bank account, which most if all businesses do, you are automatically exposed to one of the second most common claims we currently handle. The majority of the targets are high-level executives, financial department employees, clients, and vendors. And ultimately, it's simply transferring money to a third-party fraudulent bank. And just this month, we actually handled a claim where, unfortunately, a client of ours had transferred close to $1.5 million. And so this happens consistently, and it's very easy to do so. And there's multiple ways to execute this attack, which we will dive into. But ultimately, what does a lot of these attacks stem from? And again, it's the phishing links. So as of January 2020, phishing has hit a 3-year high. 90% of businesses worldwide experienced a targeted phishing attack in 2019. There was about 266,000 unique phishing sites detected in Q3 of 2019, 46% increase from Q2 in 2019. So what does phishing accomplish? It accomplishes an exploitation of your company network it allows hackers to execute certain attacks, right? So once I click on a phishing link, what that gives certain availability and windows of opportunity for hackers to then log into my system, understand vulnerabilities within our securities, and execute either a ransomware attack where they're encrypting our company's information, or start to target certain individuals to carry out a funds transfer fraud. Stolen credentials is another one of the most common ways hackers are able to actually execute their attacks. And once in doing so, once they have access, they can launch, like I said, those malwares onto your systems and ultimately start monitoring your schedule to understand when you are most vulnerable. But with that being said, there are thousands of different attacks and they're always evolving. And we could take a look at the next additional threats out there. So just before we do so, phishing continued. Again, I talk about context, right? And hackers like to take advantage of the current situation we're in, leaving multiple employees working from home remotely, not in the office environment with plenty of distractions around them. But beyond that, here's a great example of what these hackers will do to really leverage the situation. So they have started to carry out disaster relief donation scams. In particular, I know that the World Health Organization has come out with a notice, the FBI has come out with a notice in regards to these particular claims that we're seeing, where in this particular example, Greta Thunberg, one of the most well-known, I think, environmental activists in our world right now, where people are actually trying to, again, focus on a campaign, a targeted attack surrounding her name, right? And when people see certain aspects in these email titles, they're automatically engaged. There's a human curiosity aspect, especially when you're not in office and not in that office environment, where people have the ability to click on links, read things really quickly, and so forth. So Emotate malware was one of the most famous malwares we have had come to date. And a few years ago, they actually had one of the most successful attacks on numerous businesses. But again, they want to cater towards what is current and what is relevant for people to fall victim to these attacks and click on these phishing links. So additional threats, like I said, there is different threats almost every day being created and evolved. That being said, the successful hacks typically change every 6 months or so. So as a cyber MGA evolves specifically, what we have the ability to do is actually update and enhance our coverage based on the trends we're analyzing. Malware, ransomware, funds transfer fraud, those are always the biggest attacks we're seeing. Denial of service is work denying service to a legitimate user or preventing your system from working correctly. In those cases, what hackers want to accomplish is basically create this systematic approach where your business is receiving such high volume of activity on your website that you're unable to actually access and leaving you guys, again, unoperable. So your clients, your vendors, and so forth won't be able to take advantage of this. And potentially for nonprofits, right, those donations might not go through. And so that's what is at stake here. There's so much money and so much vulnerability because of the growth of technology, the fact that this is becoming a business. These attacks are increasing and evolving each and every day. So we're going to click on this live link that is going to take us to SonicWall Security Center. So what SonicWall Security Center does, this right here, as you can see, is a map, and it is a rolling 24-hour attack of statistics updated every minute or so. So what you should take away from this, if you look at the United States, we're essentially a cyber war zone, right? We've always been and always will be a target for a number of foreign entities, as well as just people within our own country that want to create chaos. So the volume of attacks is so high. And the reason that is because this industry of hacking works around the clock. They work 24/7 because if it's not in the US, it's from South America, Europe, China, Russia, and so forth. So the attack origins are from the US. Top three attack targets: United Kingdom, US. US is continually in the top three year by year. Again, because of the sort of target we have on your back. So understanding this and the scope and volume of these attacks, you might ask yourself, what can I do to protect your business and yourself? So if we want to head back onto that slide, we can sort of dive into that, right? So the best practices, first one is always education and awareness. Like I've said, and I'm going to reiterate it, employee awareness and education is the next step. That is arguably your biggest vulnerability and your biggest exposure is employees, and the resources and investing resources and time and money into building their awareness is only going to protect you more and more. Enabling privacy settings, increase default security settings, and set up alerts. One of the best default security settings, well, default in some case it is default on like Microsoft, Google, etc. And then you can purchase, much more accessible resources in regards to security settings. But the one specifically I want to touch up on is what's called multi-factor authentication. So in this case, there will always need to be two forms of identification or verification when an employee is signing into one of their accounts, such as like their CRM system, website, their Salesforce, their email. There will need to be two forms of authentication in doing so. Next one, use strong passwords and change annually. There's a number of password managers that are out there, such as 1Password, that will store, secure, and generate strong passwords on a consistent basis. Never use social logins. Limit what you do on public Wi-Fi. Use a hotspot from your cellular carrier. And then before clicking on anything, stop, think, and check to verify. The last point stems back to that employee awareness and training. And then one more thing I want to touch up on is right now, now more than ever, employees are working remote on what's called remote desktop protocol. And so this leaves a window of opportunity for hackers to actually, focus on the employees and creating not creating a system, but what they're going to try to accomplish is compromising the credentials of one of your employees. Once they have those credentials, they'll be able to actually log into your systems remotely and carry out a cyber attack. So managing risk with insurance. Again, I work for Evolve MGA, the cyber specialist market. This is our field of expertise. And when you're buying a cyber policy, you're ultimately buying access to technical resources, right? In the case the worst happens. So what you'll have is instant access to IT security experts, forensic investigators, lawyers, and PR specialists. So the situation will be managed properly with the goal of getting your business back up and running as quickly as possible. And again, we have the world's largest cyber specialist claims team built up of 90 forensic experts and data breach attorneys. So you're dealing directly with industry experts in the case of a cyber attack.
Michael, do you want me to speak to this slide?
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Okay, great. So Michael's been great in educating us and informing us. And one of the simplest ways that you can do to help protect your organization is to make sure that you've got the correct policies in place. We talked a little bit about workers' compensation earlier. We've also talked now about cyber insurance, but realize that there are other options for you as well, which is why it's important to have a complete policy review, which we're happy to set up a time to do a policy review because we want to make sure that you understand the difference between the cyber insurance, crime insurance, and directors and officers liability, because there is exposure on multiple levels depending on the entity that you're currently operating here in California. So just know that between the two of us, we're able to meet and cover all of your needs and protect your organization from any risk or peril that might be occurring while you have remote workers. So we're going to dive just a smidge deep into what a cyber policy covers and what it doesn't cover. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Michael.
Great, thank you, April. So with this cyber policy, there's really two exposure buckets, what we call the first party costs, where you as a business have been hacked and the costs associate that, and then the third party costs. So we as a business are being sued as a result of a cyber attack. And like I mentioned earlier, our goal is to get businesses back up and running as quickly as possible. And in doing so, handling claims so efficiently that we avoid the third party costs. So within our industry, what we've came to realize, and based on our data of 2019, about 90% of the claims we handled were related to these first party costs. And so that left only about 10% according to our third party costs. And when I mentioned that Evolve is the innovator of coverage in this space and our product, understand that we have unlimited reinstatement of limits for first party costs. So what does that include? It includes notification costs, forensic costs, and then there's the cyber crime where we're looking to provide coverage for ransomware, funds transfer fraud, theft of personal funds. That is a great coverage piece because in this case, what we're looking to cover is the personal funds of all senior level executive officers, board of directors, and so forth funds if a hacker targets them specifically through their network, through their company network, right? And again, like I mentioned, those are always typically the highest percent targets because obviously they're more in tune with the information, the company, and the actual funds and so forth of the company and transferring that information. So lastly, it covers the system damage and business interruption. So that is more focused on, right, business interruption, how long will your business survive, or unoperable and unable to access your systems, as well as reputational harm. Third party costs is focused on network security liability, privacy liability, regulatory fines, and penalties. So for network security liability, if in some way you transmit a malware to a third party, you could face a claim, right? Failure to prevent unauthorized access to information stored by you. That could be your employees' information, clients' information, vendor information, and so forth. Privacy liability, unauthorized access to any identifiable information. What we call that is PII, personal identifiable information. And that is any information that can be linked to an individual. And then it also covers for HIPAA, payment information, and so forth. And again, like I said, our goal is to handle the first party costs so effectively where we limit the chances of a third party claim being made against you. And that occurs with the failure to warn affected individuals of a privacy breach, right? So we have those notification costs, we have the identity theft monitoring, the credit monitoring, and so forth. And then lastly, regulatory fines and penalties. In a lot of cases, especially with California, for example, we're sort of the pioneers when it comes to our privacy laws and consumer protection. And so in the case of a cyber breach, there is a high chance that the Attorney General of California will launch an investigation on the particular breach. and make sure that you are compliant with a number of privacy regulations and so forth they have in place. So keep in mind, we will protect you in that case, and so forth. So that is really the two exposure buckets, with the first party and third party costs.
Great. Thank you, Michael. That was extremely informative. And I just want to reiterate, to highlight a couple of the things that we touched on today. And that is that inherently, when you have remote workers, there's several layers of risk when it comes to a data breach. Not only are you responsible for your employees' privacy and data, you have vendors that you've got financial information, personal information on. Maybe you have a donor, someone that's donating to your nonprofit, or you have customers. And so you're tasked with protecting all four of those areas, those people's privacy. So it is really important to make sure that you've got the correct coverage. How much coverage you need, that of course is done on a case-by-case basis. And we're always happy to sit down with you to evaluate all your policies and to talk to you specifically about the product that Michael offers through Evolve MGA. And at that point, we're done with our presentation. But if anybody should have any questions, now would be the time to go ahead and put those in the chat box. Otherwise, we will follow up by sending you a copy of this recording and the deck today. So if you have any questions at all, go ahead and put those in the chat bar, and hopefully Michael or myself will be able to answer it for you. Okay. All right, Michael, are you able to see this? What about if you use an assigned port with your RDP access? Do you know, is that still hackable? Michael, do you know the answer to that question?
So I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't say definitively that you are or aren't hackable. In that case, it sounds like with an assigned port, that's just another tool to mitigate a potential attack. So it is important to have those additional security measures when utilizing remote desktop protocol. Because again, remote desktop protocol is when your employees are able to utilize a username and password to sign into your company network. So there's a massive exposure. So when you have an assigned port or a virtual private network and so forth in place, that's going to help mitigate the potential attack. But these attacks stem from many different sources, and they're carried out in different ways. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily unhackable, but it definitely mitigates a potential attack.
Thank you. All right, do we have any other questions today? Okay, it looks like we've answered our one question. Well, everyone, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us today. And again, if you have any questions at all about the content or any questions about your current policies, we'd love to speak with you. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today. And Michael, thank you so much for allowing me to moderate all of your knowledge today. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day.
Appreciate it. Thank you.